Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the City of Casey Council meeting of the 20th of February. I'd like to welcome everybody in the gallery this afternoon and introduce the panel. My name's Nolene Duff. I'm the chair of the panel of administrators.
Good afternoon, Chair Cameron Boardman, one of the administrators.
Good afternoon, Miguel Belmar, administrator.
And we're joined this afternoon by a number of senior officers, most notably our acting CEO, James Collins, and we have Michael Jansen, who's Acting Director, City Planning and Infrastructure, Jen Bednar, Director, Customer and Corporate Services, Bronwyn Saffron, Acting Director, Community Life, and we're supported this afternoon by Matthew Crane on AV and Tessa Anderson in the governance team. And there are a number of other senior officers here present this afternoon, and I also welcome them. I'd like to start with the statement of acknowledgement. The City of Casey proudly acknowledges the traditional owners, Casey's Aboriginal communities and their rich culture, and pays respect to their elders past, present and future. We acknowledge Aboriginal people as Australia's first peoples and as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we work and live. The diversity statement. The City of Casey is home to remarkable diversity with many cultures, languages, faiths and communities of worship, ages, LGBTQI+ identities and landscapes, together forming our rich and dynamic community story. From our first Australians to our most recent arrivals and every wave between, the City of Casey welcomes and represents all community members and their respective ambitions to live healthy, rewarding and happy lives. We recognise this diversity as our strength and we aim to share, nurture and celebrate it. I now move to item 2 on the Council agenda, confirmation of minutes. There's one previous set of minutes to be confirmed, that being the 12th of December. Can I have a mover and seconder?
I'll move those.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. And seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. All in favour? Carried. Item 3, declaration of interests. I've considered my obligations under section 130 of the Local Government Act 2020 and have no conflicts to declare with respect to today's agenda. Are there any fellow administrators or officers that have a conflict to declare?
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you. No declarations to be noted. Now move to public question time, and we've got a bit of a change of format for public question time. The questions will be read out by the CEO. In this case, it'll be our acting CEO, James Collins, and then the relevant council officers will respond. So thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Chair. We have 4 public questions tonight that have been submitted through Council's website for this afternoon's Council meeting. The first question is from Judith Buchan. It's the RBA boss, Governor Michelle Bullock, has warned the decline in the number of people using cash in putting pressure on the entire payment system. This also will lead to reduced ATMs and increased travel to access ATMs, i.e. more public inconvenience and vehicle use. The Council should not be contributing to this pressure, and it is therefore again requested that the Coffee Hub currently utilising the Ratepayers Council building accept cash payments and cease discriminating against us. And Jen Bednar, the Director of Customer and Corporate Services, will respond.
Thank you. The Bunjil Place Cafe has implemented a cashless payment policy to increase speed of service, streamline banking services and reduce the chances of theft within the facility. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission advises that it is legal for a business to specify the terms and conditions that they will supply goods and services, including whether they accept cash payment. The Bunjil Place Cafe has followed all regulations pertaining to communicating the cashless policy with customers, including printed messaging at the service counter and appropriate signage on digital screens around the facility.
Thank you. The question's been posed. Thank you very much. The question's been posed and responded to. I'll ask Mr. Collins to read the next question. Thank you.
The second question is the second question is from Osvaldo Larira. My question is if it is possible to create a plan to replace the big eucalyptus trees on Cannock Grove and Burgundy Way in Narre Warren South with new, smaller and more manageable trees that would greatly enhance the area. And the Acting Director of City Planning and Infrastructure, Michael Jansen, will respond.
Thank you for that question. Council's arborists have conducted an assessment of the street trees in Cannock Grove and Burgundy Way in Narrowong South. They've identified an established avenue of red box, Eucalyptus polyanthemus, in both of those streets. These trees are semi-mature, healthy, structurally stable and have long estimated useful life of around 30 years. The trees contribute to a functional and attractive streetscape and have a high retention value. The trees also offer significant shade to the community and provide valuable habitat for our native fauna. Based on these factors, the trees are important living assets and will be preserved and managed for the future. As part of our Greening Casey draft plan, the City of Casey has recognised that its canopy cover is relatively low at 11.3% and aims to increase it to 15% by 2030. To achieve this goal, we have a responsibility to protect existing viable vegetation wherever possible.
The third question is from Tanisha Finlay. Other councils in Melbourne are using council land to partner with community housing organisations to expand the amount of social and affordable housing in their local areas. Is the City of Casey doing that? I cannot find anything on the website. If not, why not? And the Acting Director of Community Life, Bronwyn Saffin, will respond.
Thank you. Council is currently reviewing its affordable housing strategy. The review will explore opportunities to increase the amount of social and affordable housing in the municipality, including partnerships with key housing providers, the Victorian Government and the broader development sector. Council is also committed to reviewing its underutilised land holdings as part of this process, which may identify future opportunities for social and affordable housing through such partnerships.
And the last question is from Michelle Crowther. I am a local physiotherapist and many Casey mums have raised concerns about reduced maternal and child health appointments available in Casey. As a mother myself, the MCH nurses were essential in supporting our family and detecting development issues for my children. I'm saddened that Casey families are not currently receiving the same support. When will Casey restore the full visits to 3.5 years, covering the 10 key stages of children's development like other Victorian children receive?
Thank you. The City of Casey is now offering all 10 key ages and stages consultations up to the age of 3.5 years. These consultations can be booked through the Maternal and Child Health Central booking phone line. With the recent appointment of a number of new maternal and child health nurses, we anticipate that more consultation appointments will become available for families in Casey. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the questions this afternoon. I now move to item 5, officer reports. And the first of those is item 5.1, the quarterly community report, October to December 2023. Do I have a mover and seconder?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar. And a seconder?
Second the recommendation is put, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I commend this report to the community tonight. This is our report for the quarter as has been described for the period being October, November, December. The report provides an overview as to how Council is performing with respect to its council plan performance, community engagement, our engagement with the community and capital works performance. I just want to identify a couple of matters that have caught my attention in reading this report, and that is the activities that occurred during the relevant period, and as given the time of year that we were in. I note that with respect to community engagement in matters to do with sport and leisure, they related to the Casey Stride series with over 1,200 competitors, the Little Athletics Twilight Meet with 1,000 competitors, the hosting of both WBBL match and also the Family Day for Melbourne Stars, and also a number of cricket fixtures including the Aussie Cricket League and National Over 50s Cricket Championship. It's great to see the community participating in all of those events. I note that those events, many of those occurred at Casey Fields, which is a facility which has tremendous use from the community. I note as well the capital works that were undertaken and completed during this time, and they include works at the Clyde Recreation Reserve in Clyde, the Max Borsey Oval reconstruction in Narre Warren, the Robert Booth Reserve Pavilion redevelopment, also the tennis courts and lighting at Robert Booth, and finally also the Casey Fields Cricket Oval 4 and 5 Pavilion upgrade in Cranbourne East, and that upgrade of course occurring at a time so that it was available for the cricket season. I also want to note and highlight that it was during this period that our community leadership program was completed, and again I want to congratulate those members of the community who participated in that program and showed again the strength of community participation and the future leaders participating in that program. And with those comments, I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Mr Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. I endorse every comment that Mr Belmar has just made in regards to the usefulness of this report, not just our obligation under Section 97(3) of the Local Government Act, but also to put this particular report in a format that we trust is informative and easily interpretable and understandable to the community, to really give the community a sense of how we are tracking against our own council plan, but also to be quite forthright and transparent where progress has been made and when there is still progress to be achieved. It is worthwhile noting, Chair, that in the October to December quarter of the period of which this particular report coincides, that we did have over 13,000 people visit and engage with Council on the Casey Conversations page. We did receive 1,892 submissions from the community in relation to 20 major projects. And I think that measure alone indicates that we are, as effectively as we possibly can, communicating with the community to seek their feedback on areas of vital community interest, not just as it relates to the capital works forward plan and the projects that are contained within that, but also general information to the community as a whole related to council decisions. We are having ongoing discussions internally as to how we can improve that engagement with the community, not just through Casey Conversations, but other digital and other channels. And that is something that we're very much looking forward to informing the community in due course of how we are tracking progress on that matter and how, once again, more effectively we can communicate with the community accordingly. The council plan performance under the 7 objectives, which we have discussed many times previously, are quite easily interpretable and transparent through a traffic light system to give hopefully an easeability of readership to the community, and from the interpretation that we have included in this report shows that we are well and truly on track with a number, if not all, of those objectives. So it is a useful document. It is something that I think very effective from an internal and external communication process, has enormous community benefit, and I certainly would encourage those interested members of the community to use this and other quarterly reports as a reference point, not just for us to improve our services, but for the community to understand how we are approaching all our objectives under the council plan to meet their expectations. I'm happy to move the recommendation, or second the recommendation as put.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.2 is the Hampton Park Hill investigation of a proposed buffer overlay planning scheme amendment. And I note this report is an update that was requested by the council for officers to come back to council in February. So that's the nature of this report. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
Yes, I will move the recommendation as put, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. And seconder?
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Mr Boardman.
And expanding upon your introductory comments there, Chair, it was a resolution of our 17 October meeting that we would have an update. We would like to be in a position to provide a further update, but we do note that there is a proposed buffer area overlay planning scheme amendment that is currently live. The Environment Planning Authority, the EPA, does need to go through its own process, and it has given indication that they will publish sometime this year the buffer area overlay scheme amendment and the separation distance guidelines and landfill buffer guidelines that will then have a significant contribution to our future decision making. So we are being consistent with the resolution from 17th of October to give the community an update, albeit there is not unfortunately much of an update to in fact give. I will say that council officers are deeply engaged with the community in Hampton Park Hill on this matter. We are very much aware of and are being briefed quite comprehensively on the community's feedback and their concerns, legitimate as those concerns are, but the process does need to continue. It is a very structured process, it is a detailed process, and one that I will be very keen to continue to monitor very closely. Notwithstanding that this is a topic of conversation almost weekly internally amongst the administrators and the senior executives because of those complexities and the comprehensiveness of the decision that we will need to make in the future. But I do thank those council officers that are involved in that deep community engagement and consultation. They are relaying community concerns to us, as I've said, quite comprehensively, and in turn we are being very much updated and part of the process, understanding that it does have a long way to go yet. So with those words, it would be preferential to be in a position to perhaps say more than what we have, but we really don't have anything more than what is in the report, and it is simply to note where we are from a status position, but a full indication to provide the community with further updates as appropriate in the future.
Thank you. Mr Belmar?
Thank you, Chair. Can I echo the sentiments and words of Mr Boardman, and that is we undertook at our October meeting that there would be a further report early in 2024, and this matter comes back to us this evening. I just want to confirm that, as Mr Boardman has addressed, that there is deep engagement from us as administrators through the advice we receive from officers with the matters at Hampton Hill. We are unfortunately at this time not able to provide any concluded review based on the issue of a buffer area overlay planning scheme amendment, because we are continuing to await for the important work that's done by the EPA, which will be publishing separation distance guideline and landfill buffer guidelines. Once those have been obtained, as it sits out in this council report tonight, we expect our officers to provide us with a detailed report to consider any advice from the EPA, and at that time we'll be in an appropriate position and provided with the appropriate advice to make any decisions that are necessary. And so it is the position that we are placed in to continue to advise the community that we are aware of this as an ongoing issue, and we await the expert advice from the EPA.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.3 is Casey's Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan, March 24 to March 2026. Is there a mover for the recommendation?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. And a seconder.
I'll second the recommendation.
Mr Boardman. Mr Belmar.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight I am very happy to move that Council adopt the City of Casey's Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan for 2024 to 2026. I note that this has previously been before us, before it was presented to Reconciliation Australia. I note that tonight, by adopting it, it will return to Reconciliation Australia for a final adoption. It is also notable that the draft RAP underwent a comprehensive community consultation, which lasted 4 weeks from 14 October 2023 to the 10th of October 2023, and that involved both in-person engagement as well as Casey conversation access. Just reflecting for a moment on the action plan that is attached to the papers tonight, I note that it reads as it looks as a very basic document, but in fact part of its referral to Reconciliation Australia will ensure that it is presented with appropriate artwork and in an appropriate manner to reflect the use that it will have here at the City of Casey, and to ensure that it is properly presented to the community, just as all our documents are. As I read it, one part of it that caught my eye as an important statement of intention that we make by adopting this document, and I just want to reflect on this. As part of our commitment to change internally, we will implement practices that prioritise cultural sensitivity and awareness amongst staff. We will provide training and resources to enhance understanding of Indigenous cultures, histories and perspectives. We will also actively seek opportunities to collaborate with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members in decision-making processes, ensuring their voices are heard and respected. I note that this is an extensive document, but I think that that sentence and the sentiments contained in it very properly and accurately reflect the overall intention of this document. I want to commend the members of council that have worked on this document. In particular, I note the report has been prepared by Callum Paddy, and I want to acknowledge his work and the work of his team in putting this document together, and I look forward to seeing this document in its final form with its fantastic and beautiful artwork, and it will be a great representation of our commitment to reconciliation. And with those comments, I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Mr Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. I endorse the comments of Mr Belmar, and the 67 actions that are contained within this report are not just a common sense and very practical way of dealing with what at times is a complex matter around reconciliation with Aboriginal, Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people, but it is really coming from a principle of inclusiveness and encouragement. And it is very difficult to argue against those principles because they don't just apply to the 2,395 individuals who identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders within the Casey community. They apply to everybody, and respect and inclusivity and understanding and valuing cultural heritage are values that all of us should aspire to and should be very proud of. And I think, Mr Belmar, your very adroit summary of the document, albeit in its current plain format, gives testament to not just how this organisation will engage with that particular member of the community, but how we will take a very much a practical and very inclusive basis to really trying to address some of the fundamental challenges that are obviously felt and evident within the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community itself. All of the deliverables, all of the actions and the categories of the actions have been allocated task owners. There is timelines applied to them, and there are certain deliverables. And I would encourage all members of the community to read those actions, to understand the principal approach, then the consideration that's been applied to really achieve these actions, and to really look at the overarching organisational viewpoint that this is coming from a place of principled practicality to really achieve some demonstrable outcomes. There are two particular actions that I do want to highlight, Chair. One is obvious because of the timing, and it does always, on an annual basis, create a degree of newsworthiness, and that is Action 45, which states that we will seek wider community feedback on holding the annual Australia Day citizenship ceremony on alternative dates within the parameters of the federal government guidelines. I was very proud this year to officiate at the Australia Day citizenship ceremony here at Bunjil Place. We had 8 members of parliament in attendance. There was, I think, close to 300 new citizens who became new citizens on that day, and of the 8 members of parliament, 2 were members of the federal government. And we all remarked that this is an important event, something that is fundamentally treasured by the new citizens, and really gave a degree of specialness to the day and to the occasion that those who were proud enough to accept their new citizenship on the National Day of this country was one that we certainly will remember. And I think that seeing that in a practical sense really drummed home that we shouldn't purely just look at this through one lens. We should look at through the lens of the recipients of what it means to them, albeit understanding that that is a view that is not universally held by some sections of the community. So this is something for the community to decide. The federal government has placed their guidelines to give consideration for Casey and other councils to consider alternatives. But from what I experienced this year, I don't think there is, whilst the 26th of January remains a national day, there is an alternative. I think everyone that day walked away with a great sense of national pride and something that all of us were very proud of. The other recommendation I want to, or the other action I should say, I just want to draw attention to is Action 56 around an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander procurement strategy. There has to be greater engagement with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community around Indigenous-owned corporations and their barriers to entry in public procurements and other market facilitations. This is an educative piece. It is not something that provides any degree of market favouritism or lessens those barriers of entry. It is something that we would work particularly with the Kinaway Chamber of Commerce of Victoria and look at national membership on Indigenous supply chain management and so forth to really see where any Indigenous locally owned corporation could participate in our procurement activities and not just address the structural and market barriers, but some of perhaps the ideological barriers that exist. So it is one that I'm going to keep close eye on, because this is something that succeeded very successfully in other countries, particularly New Zealand, and it is something that we should, from an organisation, take a leadership role and facilitate quite earnestly. So with those comments, Chair, I endorse, as I said, Mr Belmar's comments, and happy to second the recommendation as put.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. I also support the motion before us this afternoon, and I do want to commend the work that has been undertaken to compile this action plan. In particular, I think the language in the plan is very important because repeatedly it talks about our reconciliation action plan and the collective effort that has gone into it, the engagement processes that have been undertaken, and the resultant plan with a very comprehensive set of recommendations and actions to be undertaken really puts the organisation under some pressure to deliver. And I think the objectives and the goals of that, of creating greater unity in this community and appreciation of the contribution of cultural heritage to our city, is highly commendable. So I look forward to seeing the process of implementation. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.4 is Casey Fields Sporting Precinct Road naming. Do I have a mover for the recommendation?
I will move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. And a seconder?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Mr Boardman.
Chair, it's been described to us that place names and street names is one of the more complicated activities within this organisation and all similar municipalities, because the rules are trying to avoid duplication, to try and find some local uniqueness, to try and find something which the community connect to and to meet broader planning principles. I really genuinely admire council staff who are empowered to make this decision, because just that fundamental starting position does add a layer of complexity, and I certainly would not want to be in the position of having to make those recommendations. But notwithstanding that there are some principles that have been applied here, and it's coincidental that we have just at the previous agenda item adopted a reconciliation action plan, because one of the principles that was approached this exercise was to consult with the Bunurong Land Council and the Aboriginal Corporation, and to look at words that recognised the use of the facility and the link to Indigenous flora which can be found within the Casey Fields precinct. And the 4 words that were identified were Marngrook, which is a ball game, which anyone who follows AFL would know of the Marngrook footy show, which I think is probably the best footy show around. It's the only one that actually makes any sense. But Marngrook is a common Indigenous term that I think has overlay lexicon into anglicised English, and one that is very much understood and accepted. Tilly Terran to play, I wasn't aware of until this report, but it is certainly something that has a verb and an action appropriate to the facility. Brungillo, the stringy bark eucalyptus, which certainly can be found as Indigenous flora on Casey Fields, and Walipi, the manuka, the tea tree, which is also an Indigenous flora. Several varieties can be found at the Casey Fields. I'm not going to steal Mr. Belmar's thunder because I'm sure he would like to talk about the other place names, but I will finish where I started around not just the complexity of trying to identify appropriate and meaningful place names for this location, but to develop a process and to engage with the community on that level of approach and to seek buy-in and endorsement from the community is an integrally important part of the process, and I'm very confident that has been achieved, and that the names that have been recommended to us for adoption not just cover a range of attributes from Indigenous place names, local flora and fauna, but also their appropriateness in the context, particularly Marngrook and Tilly Terran, which means ball games and to play the game in a local setting, very appropriate for Casey Fields, and I'm very pleased to move the recommendation as put.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar.
Thank you, Chair. And I will take up Mr. Boardman's invitation. I note that 4 other names were also chosen, and in keeping with the themes that have been chosen for the first 4 names, in consultation with taking on the work of the Bunurong Land Council Aboriginal Corporation, the work done by our Sustainability and Waste team was to propose other names that were also represent the Indigenous community and local flora, and those 4 names are Pendula, Poranthera, Hypnum and Manuka. And I note also attached to the papers tonight is a site plan of where those names will be used, and it's I won't ever get one of these phone calls, I suspect, but I know parents will be getting a phone call along the lines of, I'm on the corner of Marngrook and Woolpella. Mum, Dad. And it's really fantastic to think about those names being used, and the local community being able to find their way around that part of the world using names that represent the ongoing and continual contact of our Indigenous community with that part of the world. So with those comments, I also want to thank all of those council officers that have worked on this. It's fantastic work, and it shows that with a little bit of deep thought that place names can be adopted, which have which respect the long occupation of Australia. And with those comments, I am happy to second this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar, and I look forward to it being much easier to find your way around Casey Fields. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.5 is contract number 543, construction of 2 recreational reserve facilities, Clyde Recreation Reserve and Lockhaven Active Open Space Reserve, a contract variation. Do I have a mover for the recommendation, which is on page 82 of the agenda?
Yes, I will move that.
Thank you, Mr. Belmar, and a seconder.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Boardman. Mr. Belmar?
Thank you, Chair. I have considered the papers this evening and note that this is a recommendation with respect to 2 projects. I note that the the allocated construction contingency for the two reserves is insufficient to address unforeseen costs, and set out in the council papers are what those insufficiencies are, and they relate to, I won't go through all of them, but in general they relate to the provision and coordination in the installation of fire boost pumps, removal of excess spoil, security improvements, landscape and civil interface mitigation and the like. I've considered the confidential attachment and note that the amount that is requested, and taking into account the advice of officers and the basis on which the increase is sought, I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Mr Boardman.
Chair, likewise I note that there's been a number of delays associated with this project since its commencement, predominantly issues that are the responsibility of South East Water, Melbourne Water and AusNet, their assets requiring reviewed or redesign, and there's been delays in the permits to be issued for that. These matters do occur from time to time, but as Mr Belmar has articulated, we have reviewed the process, the rationale behind those delays and the value principles applied to this, and equally I acknowledge that this complies with our procurements policy and other council policies, and agree with the revised contract proposal and the recommendation to pay the contractor as per the confidential attachment, which I have also reviewed, and with that I am pleased to second the recommendation as put.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.6 is Contract 703, Clyde Road, Hardies Road intersection construction contract variation. Is there a mover for the recommendation?
Chair, I will move the recommendation, and I have probably done so. I'll come to this in my comments, but I think I prematurely commented against this agenda item in my previous agenda item, so I just want to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Mr Boardman. Seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Mr Belmar? Please proceed, Mr Boardman.
Just to repeat what I said previously, this particular contract has been delayed because of matters associated with South East Water, Melbourne Water and AusNet. I won't repeat the comments that I have just made, but having reviewed the rationale and the reasoning behind and considered that in light of the confidential attachment and the consistency with the policies, I am pleased to approve the revised contract value and verify the payment to the contractor as per the information that's been provided.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Anything to add?
No, Chair. I just want to confirm I've considered the documents, I've considered the reasons for the variation and the confidential attachment, and I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 5.7 is instrument of delegation from council to members of staff, and there's a recommendation on page 88. Is there a mover?
Yes, I'll move this.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Seconder?
Second, Chair.
Mr Boardman. Mr Belmar.
Thank you, Chair. This is a procedural motion that we move tonight with respect to delegating council's powers to officers. It's appropriate to do this, to move motions like this from time to time for the proper governance and functioning of council. I've considered the documents and the reasons for the delegations, and I am happy to move this motion. And again, I want to thank the officers who take the time to prepare these documents. It is thankless work to consider each piece of legislation and the different parts of legislation that create delegations, but it's fundamental to ensure that council's work is performed within its power. And with those comments, I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Mr Belmar. Mr Boardman.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My reason for misallocating agenda items is I was just having a very quick side conversation with Acting Chief Executive Officer around the comprehensiveness of this document, and passing on my thanks to the amount of work that's gone into the statutory function. Those avid viewers of council proceedings would know that every 2 or 3 months we do have an S11 instrument of delegation, which is predominantly relating to those officers who are authorised on the Planning Environment Act to conduct and deliver certain functions. This is a much more comprehensive document that covers a range of other statutory requirements where there is specific identification of individuals and their statutory responsibilities. As Mr Belmar has stated, this is not just a significant and very detailed task, but one that does not necessarily lend itself to internal appreciation. I think for the reasons that this is such an important part of a smooth and effectively functioning organisation, that we do need to place on the record the appreciation to the corporate governance teams and those that are involved in this review of these delegations, not just the Section 6 but the Section 11 delegations, because it does come down to a degree of statutory adherence to ensure that the right individuals in the right positions have the correct delegations and are abiding by their statutory responsibilities. It is, as I said, not acknowledged, but it is vitally important to the smooth operations and the compliance of all of our functions under various statutes from a legal and also from a service delivery basis. So I do, like all of us, echo the appreciation for the diligence and the comprehensiveness of this review process. We in no way take it for granted. It is a very vital statutory function, that equally has an enormous amount of work involved in delivering it. So with those words, I do acknowledge the recommendation, thank the staff for their vigilance in ensuring the organisation meets all of its statutory requirements and that the delegations equally consistent with those statutory requirements.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. It is indeed a comprehensive document, and it does, for those avid local government watchers, outline the detailed responsibilities that council have with respect to a range of legislation. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Now move to item 6, consideration of reports of committees, and I simply note the record of discussion as listed in the agenda papers. Petitions, we do have one petition received with 238 signatories from Rebecca Bolt to be tabled at this council meeting. The petition is with regard to the installation of a basketball ring with a concrete court to the top end of Farnborough Reserve, Domain Drive, Berwick. There is a recommendation that the petition be referred to the City Manager, City and Asset Planning to ensure contact with and a response to the head petitioner. Do I have a mover for that recommendation?
I'm pleased to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr Boardman. And a seconder?
I'll second that.
I don't think there's any debate on that. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour. Item 8 is late reports. There are none. Item 9 is urgent business. There is none. Item 10 is closed council, and there is one item for consideration in confidential this afternoon. So with that, I thank those community representatives in the gallery for their attendance this afternoon, and those watching online bid you good afternoon and declare this part of our council meeting closed. Thank you. Good afternoon.